Why do people stay in relationships that break them? It's one of the hardest questions to understand, especially from the outside. You look at them and think, why don't they just leave? You see the arguments, the manipulation, the exhaustion, and still, they stay. Not for a week, not for a month, sometimes for years. They cry themselves to sleep, promising, this is the last time. But the next morning, they're back apologizing, forgiving, hoping. It almost feels irrational. But what if it isn't? What if behind every "I can't leave," there's a deeper, more human story, one that's not about weakness, but about psychology? Because the truth is, people don't stay in toxic relationships because they love pain. They stay because something powerful and unspoken is happening inside them. Let's talk the unspoken psychology of people who stay in a toxic relationship. The hidden emotional patterns, mental traps, and fears that make escape feel impossible, even when every rational part of them is screaming to go. This isn't a story about foolishness. It's a story about attachment, trauma, and the mind's desperate need to make chaos feel like home. Let's start with something subtle but powerful. Most toxic relationships don't begin toxic. They begin beautifully. At first, it feels like a movie, intense, magnetic, almost fated. You laugh more, you feel seen, you feel chosen. You finally think, maybe this is what love is supposed to feel like. But slowly, almost invisibly, things begin to change. The warmth turns unpredictable. The affection starts to come with conditions. They begin to criticize, withdraw, or guilt you, and then apologize just enough to keep you hooked. This is called intermittent reinforcement, a term from behavioral psychology. It's the same principle that makes gambling addictive. You never know when you'll win, but when you do, it feels euphoric. In relationships, it works the same way. You never know when they'll be kind again. And that unpredictability keeps you chasing the high of the good days, hoping if you just try harder, the love will come back for good. That's not love. That's conditioning. Here's what's even more fascinating. Your brain becomes chemically attached to that cycle. Every time your partner withdraws affection, your body goes into stress mode. Your cortisol rises. Your mind panics. Then, when they finally show love again, even briefly, your brain releases dopamine and oxytocin. It feels like relief, like safety, like home. That contrast pain followed by comfort rewires your brain. It turns emotional chaos into an addictive loop. You start craving the very person who hurts you, because they're also the one who soothes the pain afterward. It's a twisted form of dependency psychologists call trauma bonding. And that's why leaving feels like withdrawal, because on a neurological level, it actually is. But it's not just chemistry, it's fear. For many, staying in a toxic relationship is about survival. Not physical survival, but emotional survival. Maybe they grew up in a home where love was unpredictable, where affection and tension coexisted. Maybe they were taught that love must be earned, not given. So, when they meet someone who treats them the same way, it doesn't feel wrong, it feels familiar. Their nervous system recognizes the chaos, not as danger, but as home. That's the hidden truth. People often stay in toxic relationships not because they don't know it's toxic, but because, deep down, it feels like the version of love they've always known. It's painful, but it feels safe. Another powerful reason people stay, they lose themselves. Over time, toxic relationships erode your sense of self. You stop recognizing your reflection. You start questioning your own feelings. You start apologizing for existing. Psychologists call this gaslighting. When someone manipulates you into doubting your reality, they'll say things like, "You're overreacting. That never happened. You're too sensitive." And slowly, you start to believe them. You start trusting their version of the truth more than your own. Your confidence shrinks. Your independence dissolves. Until leaving doesn't just mean walking away from a person, it means walking away from the version of yourself you've become. And that's terrifying, because at that point, you're not just scared of being alone, you're scared of not knowing who you are anymore. Then there's hope, the cruelest part of all. Toxic relationships often exist on a pendulum. There are moments of chaos, but also moments of tenderness that feel like redemption. They say, "I'll change." They cry, they apologize, they hold you. And for a moment, you see the person you fell in love with. the one who made you believe in love again, the one you know they could be if they just tried. That glimpse of who they were keeps you there. You think, maybe if I'm patient, they'll become that person again. But they don't, because that version of them was never meant to last. It was bait. Not always consciously, but psychologically. In toxic relationships, hope becomes the cage, and the belief that it'll get better is the lock that keeps it shut. Here's another invisible chain: guilt. You tell yourself things like, they're not always bad, they've been through a lot, they need me, or worse, if I leave, who will they have? That's empathic guilt, the tendency to take responsibility for someone else's emotional pain. It's what keeps good-hearted people stuck in bad situations. You begin to think leaving is an act of betrayal, not self-respect. You mistake self-sacrifice for loyalty. But the truth is, staying doesn't save them, it only breaks you. And love that requires your destruction isn't love, it's control. Then there's what happens outside the relationship, the world you present to others. You post smiling photos. You say, we're fine. You defend them when people express concern, because admitting the truth feels humiliating. It feels like failure. You've invested so much time, emotion, and identity into this person. To leave would mean facing the fact that you were never as loved as you believed. That's called cognitive dissonance, when your mind can't reconcile two conflicting realities. I love them, and they hurt me. So to protect your self-image, you silence one of them, usually the one that hurts more. You tell yourself, it's not that bad. Every couple fights. And that's how the illusion stays alive, even when the soul beneath it is slowly dying. Here's what happens the longer you stay. You begin to shrink your personality to avoid conflict. You stop sharing opinions. You suppress your joy because it triggers their jealousy. You start apologizing for things you didn't do. You begin to confuse peace with silence. And the saddest part? You start believing you deserve it. That's the long-term effect of emotional abuse. It rewrites your self-worth until you no longer see the difference between love and punishment. You think you're holding the relationship together, but in truth, it's the relationship that's holding you hostage. But something changes, eventually. It's never dramatic, it's quiet. Maybe one morning, you wake up and realize you haven't laughed in months. Maybe you catch yourself apologizing just for speaking. Or maybe you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. And for a second, just a second, something inside whispers, this isn't love, this is survival. That's the first moment of clarity, the beginning of emotional awakening. The realization that leaving isn't betrayal, it's self-rescue. Leaving a toxic relationship isn't easy. It's one of the hardest things a person can do. Because you're not just walking away from someone you love, you're walking away from a version of yourself that thought love meant endurance. Healing starts small. It begins with remembering simple truths. You're not crazy. You're not too much. You're not impossible to love. You were just made to believe those things by someone who benefited from your doubt. Recovery means learning to trust your reality again, to rebuild your self-worth brick by brick, to learn that love should feel calm, not anxious, safe, not suffocating, reciprocal, not one-sided. And the day you realize that peace is more powerful than passion, that's the day you finally understand what love was meant to be all along. If this message resonates with you, if you see yourself in these words, please don't stay silent. Reach out, talk to someone, a friend, a counselor, a support group, anyone who can remind you that you're not alone, because healing begins the moment you speak the truth, and silence is what keeps the cycle alive. And if you know someone stuck in a toxic relationship, don't shame them for staying. Understand them, because before they can leave, they first need to believe they deserve to. Here's what I hope you remember. People stay in toxic relationships not because they're blind, but because they're broken open. They love deeply, they hope fiercely, and sometimes that very goodness becomes their greatest weakness. But one day, they'll understand love that costs you your peace is too expensive to keep. And when they finally walk away, it won't be with hatred, it'll be with quiet strength. Because real healing isn't loud, it's peaceful. So if you're listening to this right now, feeling trapped, confused, or ashamed, take a breath. You're not weak for staying, but you'll be brave for leaving. And when you do, you'll realize you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. If this video touched you, subscribe for more stories about human behavior, emotional healing, and the hidden sides of love. You never know, the next video might help you understand yourself a little better.